Greetings, Mind Crafters, and welcome to another Minecraft episode on this beautiful gift of a day. My name is Kimberly Quinn, and I am so ecstatic. Every day I get so thrilled to do these podcasts as well as the video ones because my whole thing, my whole mission in this life really is to to help people to become the boss of their brain, really grab the reins, grab the reins on your thoughts like a thoroughbred. Think of the thoroughbred as a powerful, powerful, gorgeous, powerful animal, metaphorical for the brain, right? Because the jockey on top usually weighs about 85 pounds or something. That tiny little jockey navigates that powerful, beautiful racehorse around the track, keeping its direction and keeping it centered, which is what we're going to talk about today. Learning how to stay centered. And my shout out of inspiration today goes to Richard Carlson, PhD. He is the author of Don't Sweat the Small Stuff books. And there are many. There are little books, and I would strongly encourage them. Similar but different, the Sarabon Brednek Simple Abundance. They have different themes, but they're set up sort of similarly in that they're just like a page or a page and a half, um, each. So you can just dip in anywhere. It's not a cover to cover situation. And you just kind of get, as people say, grab your nugget for the day and run. And so this whole staying centered things, I've done other ones similar where, sort of staying in the eye of the storm. Jon Kabat-Zinn, my favorite mindfulness guy, probably the number one, I would say, at least in the country, probably world too, maybe, I don't know, but he's in the top mindfulness guru, category. And so he does these drop-ins all day long, as I do too. So anyway, let's start. So Richard starts out by saying, regardless of your specific concerns or what issues you are currently being confronted with, learning to stay centered is bound to help you. Being centered is a quality that brings harmony, equanimity, and balance into your life. A person who is centered is able to remain calm in the midst of crisis and is able to make wise, appropriate decisions on an ongoing basis. Being centered also keeps you from being bothered or annoyed by little things and assists you in keeping your cool. As the name suggests, being centered keeps you from being thrown off balance by the events and circumstances in your life. Being more centered will help you deal with your family, your budget, your home, and all your important decisions. I love this. So, this is taking me right back to, of course, mindfulness, because when we practice mindfulness, consistently, we're not talking about a lot of time. We're talking about just being present, right? People get mindfulness confused with meditation a lot, and you can hear it be called mindfulness meditation, but really it's about being present. You don't have to sit still, thankfully for me. You don't have to, do the lotus position, palms up thing or do mantras, though you can. You can just be present doing the dishes. You can be present with your kids, be present with your partner, be present making dinner. One of my favorite, I really enjoy cooking, but especially dinner. I'm not as much of a, chef outside of dinner time as much, but I just enjoy the whole thing. Put the jazz music on, the whole thing, and just be present. Be present. Be present when you're driving. Well, hopefully, it just in a bath, in a shower, whatever, and the whole thing is when we practice mindfulness and being present, we are far less apt to react. And react is that knee jerk situation, right? Whereas respond is able when we kind of are able to take a step back, even if for a minute, even 30 seconds is better than no seconds. And we're able to, have a much healthier, better interaction after whatever just went down. And it's similar to running, and if you are being mindful as much as you can each day, even if that's 15 minutes, 15 minutes is better than no minutes. It's kind of like running. If you run, you like to run every day a week, you didn't run Saturday this week. Okay, well, you're still in shape. And if next week you run days out of 7, you're still in shape. So it's the same thing with mindfulness. If you're mindful the majority of the time, to the best of your ability, you're going to really be able to stay centered more in your day and to be less reactive, less judgmental, just in such a better place. You're far going to be far better able to anchor yourself. So Richard basically says the same thing I am coming up. He's, the easiest way to stay centered is to learn to keep your attention on the present moment. Where we keep our focus is where our energy goes, which is then what will work out the best, what will be successful. Okay, so that sounds all positive because it is if you're placing your energy on a positive thing, person or situation. We can also, and often do, put our energy on ruminating over things that didn't work out right and all the woulda, coulda, shouldas. I'm going to get that person back and I'm going to say this, they caught me off guard, I'm going to say that. Or are you starting with all the what if thinking and you got all your energy going into what if I lose my words in the presentation? What if my teammate doesn't show up? What if my colleague doesn't show up? What if I don't get the raise? What if I get laid off? All that energy, that's what's going to be successful, right? Worrying, which is what that is rehearsing anxiety. So just like anything else, we get better at where we put our energy. We get better at what we practice or rehearse. So if you want to be a world-class warrior, you can do it. Just like, Michael Phelps stood on the top of the little, three-step thing earn his to win his, eighth gold medal. If there were a warrior Olympics, there's a gold, silver, bronze also there for you. And so Richard jumps into the same thing because where our mind goes is where our feelings are going to go. Is literally impossible to feel nervous without thinking nervous thoughts first. And sometimes students will say, you understand, I'm diagnosed. No, I understand. And it's still the truth. It's harder for some than others to manage their thinking, but still when it comes down to it, it's our choice. And the only way to stay centered and calm is to think centered, calm thoughts. Again, we can't be angry without thinking angry thoughts first. And sometimes people get confused, and that's because of automatic thinking, because it's coming out of the vault and they're on autopilot. Biggest thief of life minutes that there is being on autopilot. And maybe they're not consciously thinking them, like trying to, but they're running through their minds. Because think about it. If you were to move somebody's mind with kindness and anesthesia and put that someone's mind, brain up in a fishbowl on a shelf in formaldehyde, what is that person feeling? Answer nothing. Why? Because the brain has to think the thoughts first. No brain, no feelings. That's how it goes. This is why I love it when people say you are what you eat. Think about that for a second. What good is the apple if you have no brain? Okay, don't overthink that one. Okay, right. So not to dismiss nutrition because it's certainly ultra important, but we are what we think. We are literally what we think. We become what we think about all day long. And Wayne Dyer probably says it the most eloquently, which is when we change the way we think of things, when we change the way we think of things or about things, the things we think about change. And that is probably the best way I've ever heard it. And here's the thing is Richard says, and if you observe how you feel when your mind is somewhere other than the here and now, you'll notice how stressed you feel and how easily things can bother you. How easily things can bother you. So when we stay centered in the moment, doesn't mean we're going to walk around being perfect because perfect doesn't exist anyway. And you know how I feel about the word because we're better off dropping the F-bomb than dropping the P word because it's self-abuse of the highest order. Who said that? Anne Schaaf said that. Self-abuse of the highest order. And so Richard says, for example, if you're thinking about how busy you are and how many more things you still have to do today, and someone asks you a simple question, it can seem like a burden to offer a thoughtful response. Your focus is on your your focus on your own busyness suggests that your attention is elsewhere. How many times have we encountered that in life when maybe we've got something important to say? We're not talking about enormously important, but maybe we're just excited to share something and we're talking with somebody who's clearly they're standing in front of us, but it's kind of like the lights are on and no one's home. There's this vacant gaze and you can just feel this energy of hurry up and finish what you're saying because I don't care anyway. And they're not like a mean bad person. They just don't care in that minute. Their head is somewhere else. We can feel it. You put it out there. So they are missing that present moment. It's gone. It's never going to return. Never, never, ever, ever, ever. And their mind went to, you know, off in distant, like I want to say cyberspace, but just disappeared into space. And that present moment is just never to return again. It's circling the drain. Okay, then he says, It magnifies your workload and makes everything seem more difficult and demanding. And then Richard says, however, if your attention is more in the moment, it encourages you to do one thing at a time as it arises. This is of utmost importance because sometimes you hear people trying to do more than one thing at once, and they'll say, "Oh, I'm such a great multitasker." And my Minecraft students, actually my Cog Psych students too, because it comes up in both classes. And I'll tell them, "This is what you say the next time somebody says, "Oh, I'm such a great multitasker. I have like 9 kids, and I'm getting 3 college degrees, and I have 4 jobs, and I plan to take off with NASA within 10 years, and all this stuff. I'm such a great multitasker." And I mean, it's kind of rude to just call them a liar, although they they laugh when I say that, liar. But that isn't nice to call people liars, unless of course they are. Then I guess maybe you want to call them out on it. But this isn't that situation. It's just a neuropsychological fact, physiological fact, that the brain is wired to do exactly one thing at a time. What appears to be multitasking is an illusion because all that's going on in that moment is a very quick shift of attention. Might even be milliseconds, but they are not doing two things at once. This is also why I'm not a huge fan of death by PowerPoint, not at all. And I don't use them to teach ever. And this is because there's something called cognitive competition that happens. So we can't see and hear at the same time. And we can see and hear at the same time, I guess, sort of, but we can't process it at the same time. That's really more what I'm saying. The information's coming in, but we're just going to oscillate back and forth. So if you're looking at a PowerPoint and you're reading the text, you're not taking in what the person is saying when they're presenting. If you're looking at them in the eyes and watching them do the presentation, you're hearing them, you're not taking in the other. So that's just how it works. It's because the brain is kind of vying, for the attention of one or the other, and that's how it works. The only time I use PowerPoints is when I go do a big presentation someplace, because then you kind of have to. But I definitely don't teach like that on a daily basis and I also certainly, I'm not into bossing young adults. I tell them it's fine if you want to take notes. We don't do tests in anything I teach. It's all papers and interactive projects and reflective type stuff. So I tell them you can take notes if you want to. I would strongly encourage you not to. And I tell them to say it's for the same reason. If you're full throttle 100% listening, not just to me, but to each other, because I'm interactive. I'm not a sage on the stage. If you're 100% listening to what's the conversation going on in the classroom, then you're going to walk away with a much higher percentage of, memory for that content and all these exciting things we're talking about. And you're more apt to, to store it well, recall it later well, and really enjoy the experience more than if you're trying to write notes at the same time. And so, again, it's up to them, and most of them usually opt out. Almost, I would say, nearly all of them opt out for just being present in the room, and it works out great. And the conversations are better because people aren't distracted. They get so into the conversations that they're so excited. Time just flies by in the classroom, and that's because we're not splintering our attention with other things. Okay, so the flip side of the splintered attention is when we have full throttle focus. Okay, so then, which I work at every day. I work at it every day of my life. I'm not going to say I've definitely not evolved to that point. I just would like to be more present than not present when the day's over. That's where my bar is. I like to be more present in what I'm doing, regardless if I'm, giving Giovanni a belly rub, which actually that's one of my meditative techniques. I can't even, I should say mindfulness techniques. Um, Sounds better, is better, more real, more accurate. And making dinner, the whole thing. I like to be more centered than not being centered by the end of the day. So then, Richard says, if you are centered and someone asks you a question in the midst of your busy day, you'll be far more likely to simply shift gears easily without distress and offer a response. Notice he said offer a response. He didn't say offer a reaction, right? Rather than being frantic a great deal of the time, you'll be far more relaxed and at ease. And this is a good time to remind everyone that the brain loves repetition and patterns. Repetition turns into patterns The brain loves them. The brain picks up a pattern like a football and runs full field, heading towards a touchdown. That's how the brain works. And that can work for us or against us, depending on the football, right? You can also turn around and run it the opposite direction to the opposite team. That would be like the negative metaphor, right? So if we're running full throttle towards positivity, towards living your best life, living the happiness lifestyle, you want to be rehearsing, you want to be allowing the good thoughts in, and you want to be letting those resonate and really letting the brain get the good feels. Let it get the good thoughts lead to the good feels, and you want your brain to get very, very comfortable with those. Same thing with being centered. The more time you spend working towards being centered, being fully present, the brain finally eventually gets it. Okay, this is what we're doing. We're washing the dishes now. It's time to really zen out, feel the hot water, feel the suds, feel the closure of having one dish at a time be done. Just the whole thing. Being centered in a conversation. Wow, didn't that go well? Because I was fully engaged and actively listening. If you're stacking wood, be present. The brain eventually gets it. And like anything else, the maintenance of said task gets easier. Just like we brought up the guitar thing a bunch of times. When you first learn to play guitar, you get calluses. I've done this, is how I know. Well, because with my fast mind, I go through all kinds of stuff, and then it's fun, and then I'm over it. So the calluses thing, before long, you play Margaritaville, and there's no more calluses. Well, when you learn to be centered, it gets easier and easier and easier to do so. And I will tell you, at my fabulous 58 years, I work at. So work makes it sound like it's a chore. It's not like that. I allow and encourage myself to drop in at least 3 times a day, and I do the 4-4-8 breathing, and that's 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, 4, 1,000 for the inhale. Hold it again to 4, 1,000. Hold it, right? And then an 8, 1,000 exhale, because research has demonstrated over and over again how good that is, not only physiologically, but for our mind. I can be in the middle of a boring meeting. I can be driving in the Jeep and looking at the gorgeousness of the Adirondacks and Lake Champlain. I can be in a conversation. I can be whatever. No one knows. You're breathing. And I drop in and kind of check in with myself. And that's very John Kabat-Zinn. He just drops in at any moment during the day. And it's hysterical to watch him on a video. Somebody could be mid-sentence and he just kind of like closes his eyes and disappears for a minute or less. I don't close my eyes and do all that when I'm just dropping in throughout the day. But I do that, and I do 3 of the 4-4-8 breaths each time I drop in. That's literally, count the seconds, less than a minute. And I feel incredibly, incredibly centered after doing so. So, Richard winds us up with, he says, being centered brings with it a feeling of calm and ease. When you can maintain a sense of well-being, even in the midst of chaos, you'll discover that life is much easier to deal with and far more manageable. Oh, than when your attention is scrambled and frantic. Well, amen, brother. Rather than remembering the hard day you had yesterday or anticipating the difficult day you're likely to have tomorrow, you'll be more able to make today the best it can possibly be. Oh, that's absolutely that's music to my ears. I live that tune. Okay, this is Kimberly Quinn signing off from the beautiful northern Vermont. Have a mindful, very centered day.